The COVID-19 pandemic brought out both the best and the worst in humanity. While some of us contented ourselves with keeping in contact with family and friends via Zoom, some politicians flouted their own rules to host parties. While some of us helped support elderly neighbors and the less fortunate, others hoarded toilet rolls as if they were gold. And while some clapped for doctors and nurses, others used a global pandemic as a personal get-rich-quick scheme. Despite being granted key worker status, the construction and demolition industry was hard hit by COVID. Many were forced to use the government's coronavirus business interruption loan and bounce-back loan schemes just to make it through. Sadly, as you're about to hear, these schemes were widely and unforgivably abused.
It's wild. The pandemic already feels like ages ago, but we're still seeing these aftershocks, And in some industries, it's like, whoa, things are really different now.
Yeah,
Like construction, right? You'd think, oh, things are built, we're good, but it's a whole other story.
it's a mess.
We're talking billions in loans, and get this, thousands and thousands of businesses in the UK are having a tough time paying those loans back.
Yeah, it's a big problem.
So today, we're doing a deep dive into why construction is being hit so hard and what this all means for, well, everyone really, even if you don't know a hammer from a screwdriver.
Exactly, yeah.
And to help us untangle this whole thing, I've got, well, you could say our resident construction and finance guru with us.
Hey, glad to be here. Always happy to dig into this stuff, although it's complicated, to say the least. But I guess the starting point for all this goes back to those emergency support programs, the ones the UK government rolled out during the heart of COVID.
Right. Those are lifesavers for so many businesses when everything just shut down.
Exactly. We're mainly focusing on, two of them, the bounce back loans, the BBLs, everyone called them, and then those coronavirus business interruption loan schemes, or CBILs for short.
Right. The BBLs and CBILs.
And they were crucial, don't get me wrong. But there's this thing, catch, I guess. Those loans, they were government guaranteed.
Oh.
Meaning if a business can't repay,
Taxpayers are holding the bag.
bingo, you got it. And it's not a small chunk of change either.
No, I bet. We're talking, what, a couple billion?
Try almost 7.68 billion. That's billion with a B.
Yeah.
In defaulted BBLs from construction companies alone. Just those.
Hold on. Whoa. Billions.
Billions.
How many companies are we actually talking about here?
We're looking at nearly 40,000 construction firms defaulting just on those BBLs.
Wow. That's like, what, almost 1 in 10 construction companies in the entire UK, right?
Something like that, yeah. It's a huge number.
This is way bigger than I mean, I knew it was bad, but this is...
And that's not even factoring in the CBILS defaults.
Oh, right, there's those too.
Now, fewer businesses defaulted on those, that's true. But those loans, they were for way more money, like often up to £5 million.
5 million?
So even one business defaulting on a CBILS,
Yeah.
that's massive.
Okay, yeah, we're talking serious money, serious consequences. But what makes construction so vulnerable in the first place? Is it just a pandemic hangover, or is there something more going on?
That's the question, isn't it? It's not so simple. But a big factor here is, well, it's just the nature of the construction industry itself, right? A lot of these firms, especially the smaller ones, they operate on tiny margins, like really, really thin. Any little wobble in the economy, they feel it hard.
Yeah, I can see that. Because you bid on a project with a budget in mind, and then, bam, inflation hits, and suddenly...
Exactly. And we all know what inflation's been doing lately. It's been wild. And see, construction projects, they often use these fixed-price contracts. That means even if your costs for materials double in the middle of a project, you can't just renegotiate. You're stuck. And that eats away at those already thin profit margins, sometimes to nothing.
So you're this small builder, family business, maybe you're trying to make it work, costs are exploding, projects are getting delayed, and then there's this Lifeline, the BBL. It's got to be tempting, even if things are uncertain.
Yeah, you're really in a bind. And some wrote it out, they did fine, but others, not so much. Now, some cases were straight-up fraud, we'll get to those, but a lot of these businesses, they took the loans hoping for the best. Who knew it'd be like this, right? And that's where these stories you mentioned come in. Because behind all these numbers, it's real people dealing with the fallout.
Right, and some of these stories are pretty wild. Like that contractor in Bedfordshire, he gets a £50,000 bounce-back loan, the max, right?
Yep.
And within days, he's transferred almost all of it into his personal account. What was he thinking?
Beats me. I mean, that's exactly what you're not supposed to do with a government-backed loan, right? Talk about a red flag.
Yeah, no kidding. What happened?
He got disqualified as a company director for 13 years.
13 years. That's like his whole career, basically.
Pretty much. It's like some people saw these loans as free money, like they didn't realize or maybe just didn't care about the consequences.
And those consequences, they go beyond just one person, you know? These were taxpayer backed, so someone defaults. It affects everyone a little bit.
It's like this huge breach of trust, you know?
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, were there a lot of cases like this? Oh, yeah. There was this father-son duo in Bristol. Got a little greedy.
Oh, yeah, this one was bad. They submitted like a bunch of applications, right? For all their different businesses. Trying to pull a fast one.
Tried to, yeah. Inflated their company income, you know, made it seem like the pandemic hit them way harder than it did.
What'd they get?
Ended up with suspended prison sentences.
So a slap on the wrist compared to that Bedfordshire guy.
Kind of, yeah. But still, a suspended sentence is not nothing. Plus, they could lose anything they got from their little scheme. Shows you the authorities aren't messing around.
I mean, yeah, that'll get your attention, right? But it's not always about some big scheme, is it? Some folks were just in a tight spot, made some choices they maybe, I don't know, regret now.
Oh, for sure. It wasn't always malicious, right? You get caught up. Like, there's this director, London-based, right? He claimed his company, construction company, was making over 200 grand just to get the biggest loan possible.
Right, so trying to game the system a bit there.
Well, that's the thing. He swore up and down it was desperation.
Yeah.
Thought his business would bounce back, no problem. Wasn't trying to, you know, pad his own pockets or anything.
Yeah, but rules are rules, right?
Tell me about it.
So what happened to him?
10-year director ban? Yeah. You better believe he learned that lesson the hard way. Shows you, even when times are tough, you got to play it straight.
No kidding. These stories are crazy, but they, like, point to something bigger going on in construction, don't they? Where do we even go from here? What does this all mean for the whole industry?
$1 million question.
Right.
We're already seeing it, though. Insolvencies in construction, they're skyrocketing. Like,
Yeah.
haven't been this high in over a decade.
Wow.
And these defaults, they're just making it worse.
Because it's not just one business going under, right? Doesn't that cause like a ripple effect or something?
Exactly. Construction, it's all connected. One project, you've got subcontractors, suppliers, all these specialized tradespeople. If even one part of that chain breaks down,
Domino effect.
precisely, hits everyone.
So one default could take down a bunch of other companies.
It's possible, definitely. And that's not even considering the lending side.
Oh, right. The banks.
Even before the pandemic, banks were hesitant to lend to construction, right? Too risky.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But now, after all these defaults,
They're going to be even more careful.
you bet.
So it's going to be harder for these companies to get loans in the future. That's not good.
Not good at all.
Yeah.
Lenders see these defaults and they think, is construction sustainable? And that can really stifle growth, you know, innovation, the whole industry trying to bounce back.
It's like a vicious cycle. They need money to recover, but the defaults make it harder to get that money. So what do we do? Are there solutions? Can we turn this thing around?
If only it were that simple. Some folks, they think stricter lending's the answer. Make it tougher to get money you can't afford to pay back, right?
Yeah,
Problem is, that could really hurt the smaller companies, the ones just starting out.
the ones hit hardest to begin with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why others, they think it's more about support. Give these businesses the resources, the guidance, you know, help them through it.
So it's a balancing act. Too easy with the loans, you get more defaults, taxpayers are out more money, but too strict, and the industry can't recover.
You nailed it. It's a mess. No easy answers. And then you get into the whole personal responsibility versus system thing.
What do you mean?
Well, sure, some people took advantage, right? No questions.
Yeah.
But others, they were up against it, challenges no one saw coming. Where do we draw the line? Who takes the hit for all these defaults?
That's a tough one. Like you said, it's not just numbers, it's people's lives. And we haven't even talked about, like, the impact on taxpayers. This all lands on them, right?
It does. Those government guarantees we talked about, they mean if a business can't pay back a BBL or CBIL, the government's on the hook. And who funds the government?
Right, the taxpayers. So while we're talking about fraud and all that, there's this whole other side. Public finances, everyday people.
Exactly. We're talking billions that could have gone to essential services, building things people need, maybe even lowering taxes. Instead, it's covering these defaults.
That's rough, especially now. Every penny counts.
No doubt. And it makes you wonder about those loan schemes, right? Were there enough safeguards? Could they have prevented some of this?
Big questions.
Big questions with no easy answers. And policymakers. They'll be dealing with this for years.
Yeah, no kidding. And what about the people who worked for these companies that went under? What happens to them?
Oh man, that's the part people forget sometimes. It's not just the bigwigs, the directors. It's the employees, the subcontractors, everyone who depended on that business. They're the ones who really feel it. Jobs gone, no income.
Just ripples outward, impacting everything.
Exactly. And it shows we got to look at this whole picture. Can't just be about punishing whoever messed up. We got to help those caught in the middle too, you know? Give them a way to get back on their feet.
It's amazing to me how this just, like, touches everything. It's really got me thinking.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack. And that's why we talk about it, right?
For sure.
We got to get into the nitty-gritty, understand what's really going on, and hopefully, maybe, figure out how to, build things better next time. For everyone.
Absolutely. Like you always say, knowledge is power.
That's it. The more we know, the better we can deal with all this, right? We ask the right questions, hold the right people accountable, and maybe, just maybe, we can make things a little bit better.
Couldn't agree more. And that's really what we try to do here on the Deep Dive, right? Take these big, complicated things and, like, break them down.
Make it make sense.
Exactly. So I think it's about time we wrap up this deep dive. But before we go, I want to leave folks with something to think about. We've talked about the money, the rules, the whole legal side of these COVID loans, right?
Right.
But there's another side to all this. It's harder to talk about, but it matters.
The human cost. It always comes back to that.
Yeah, and the ethics of it all, We've heard these stories, people making tough calls, backed into a corner. It makes you think on a bigger scale.
It really does. Like when good intentions go wrong, who's responsible? Is it just on the people who broke the rules? Or is there something bigger in the system itself that needs fixing?
Yeah.
No easy answers to that one.
Uh-huh.
There's something to think about in our own lives even.
For sure. It's easy to judge, to say you should have known better, but it's always more complicated than that, isn't it? Behind the numbers, behind the headlines, there's always people.
Always. And sometimes those stories, those individual experiences, that's where the real lessons are.
Well said. Well, there you have it, folks. A deep dive into construction, COVID loans, and just, well, the ripple effects. We looked at the numbers, the stories, the tough questions.
A lot to think about.
It really is. But even with all this, even with the mess, there's always hope, right?
Absolutely.
Shining a light on this stuff, talking it out, that's how we make things better.
Couldn't agree more.
Big thanks to our expert for walking us through all this. And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Keep asking those questions, stay curious, and we'll figure this out together. Until next time.